Hey guys, it's Payment again, coming back with a quick little tip. So you might recall last time around we went through and we applied a filter to furniture and casework to sort of showcase these elements in a floor plan by color, where in this instance we wanted to differentiate the responsibility of the furniture casework, whether it be provided by the owner or it would be provided by the contractor. So when we did that, we noticed that it wasn't being applied to all of the furniture within the project. And you can see we've set the responsibility here, but the color is not actually applying. We look at this furniture system here, it's the same case. And this is a little bit more complicated because there are families within families, there are families nested. So let's go about troubleshooting this and see if we can find a fix. This I think is really good because a lot of times you're going to bring in families that are not going to look the way you want them to, and they're not going to behave the way you want it to visually. You won't be able to apply filters, overrides, whatnot. So this is a good way of going about finding out what's causing it. So let's open up this task chair. So we're going to go ahead and edit the family. We're going to go ahead and so you can see it in 3D, everything looks normal, but we're going to go to our floor plan and you're going to notice the model elements themselves are in a halftone and they've drawn symbolic lines. And the reason they did this is that, you know, they went ahead and decided to hide the geometry and use symbolic lines to create the representation in a plan view. So you can, anytime you select model elements, you can go ahead and select the visibility settings. And here you can specify whether that geometry will actually show in specific views, whether it be front, back elevations, left, right elevations. Usually that applies to sections as well. In this case, they've hidden it in plans. We want to turn that on because when you hide it in plan, when you hide the geometry in plan, you can't use graphic overrides and you can't use filters. You then would have to go into this view and use annotation tools inside the family to add color and whatnot, and that can be a little bit complicated. It's a little bit unnecessary to go about it that way. Now, if for the sake of color, you might want to turn it on for now, and then once you've progressed within the project, you've reached a later phase of the project, you can come back and then hide it and use those symbolic lines again. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and turn the model elements on, and we're going to do it for pretty much all the geometry. So you can see I'm now filtering, and to make sure I only have the actual furniture element selected, and I'm going to go to my visibility settings. The box means it's a combination of both. Some are hidden and some are shown. So in this case, we're going to click it off and then click it back on again, and we're going to hit OK. Once we do that, we can see that now our geometry is now a darker shade, which is what we want. It wouldn't be a bad idea to select all the furniture lines and select them all, filter them, and deselect furniture from our filter so we only select the lines. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the visibility of the lines so that way they're not going to appear in the plan. You're not going to have double lines, so it doesn't look weird. So once we've done that, we're going to load it into the project, roll it back into the office building, and we're going to overwrite the existing version. And as you can see, now it is back on. Granted, maybe it doesn't look the way you want it to. Maybe you might want to refine it with the symbolic lines as well, so that way it does sort of look the way you want it to. But you can see that it's back, and not only that, you can see that it has been applied to this furniture system because this family is nested within that furniture system, and that's why once you've loaded this into the project, it has gone ahead and overridden the properties of this family. That's something to keep in mind. A lot of times you'll have individual families, and then you'll have that same family nested in another component. Once you make a change and load it in, it then will apply it to all the instances regardless. So just something to keep in mind. But we can see in this table, this conference table, we still have our elements that need to be adjusted. So same situation here. We've set the responsibility to the owner, and we're going to drill into this family and see if we can go about fixing it. So when we edit this one, you're going to see that we've got an array group for these chairs. Now these were the chairs that we loaded into our model previously, and you can see we've got a different family, which is chair task arms. This one's chair task arms. This one I believe is, if I tab select, this is chair task, right? So in this case, we're going to want to go back into this family, and we're going to do the same thing that we did in the previous one. So we're going to go into our floor plan. We're going to go ahead and, yeah, you can see the halftone model elements. So what you're going to do is you're going to select everything, and you're going to filter, and you're going to deselect the lines. We're going to hit OK. Now that we've got our geometry selected, ooh, this one's a little bit trickier because there's some work plane based elements, right? These guys. So we might have to go through it a little bit more individually to turn on the visibility settings. So we're going to hit OK. Another thing that I want to see that we might be able to do is if I filter, deselect, and hit OK. Right, so even though the visibility graphics did not appear here, we can see that it does appear within the properties. So a lot of times when that functionality is not within the ribbon, check the properties, it could be there. So we're going to go ahead and, yeah, we're going to turn it on in the Plan RCP. We're going to, okay, I'm going to leave the line work on this time and load it in. Maybe it'll look a little bit better. So from here on, I'm going to load it back into the table conference. You can go ahead and load it into the model itself, and it could make the change automatically for you, but it's probably better to just go up the chain of families. So we're going to load it back into the conference chair, and we're going to overwrite the existing version now that we've got it here. So now let's load this into the project, and it should work. We're going to load it into the project. Yeah, office building. Okay, we're going to hit OK. So we're going to overwrite the existing version. So this already exists, but we're going to go ahead and overwrite it anyways. And then it's going to ask us about the task arms. So we're going to overwrite this one as well. So now we've got all our chairs are orange. So that is how we wanted it to be. The last thing that we have to do is just make the change to the table. So if we go back to our family here, we're going to select the table itself, and we're going to see, yeah, it's the same thing that's going on here. So we're just going to turn it on in the 3D view, and we're going to load it back into the project. We're going to hit OK, overwrite the existing version, boom, and now you can see that the table is now, everything is orange. We've specified the responsibility because that geometry is in there. It's catching the rule-based filter that we have set. One thing I guess we should do is edit this chair again, and maybe maybe go ahead and turn the symbolic lines. Let's make them visible. So hit apply on the filter and turn the visibility back on, load it back into the project, overwrite, and now it looks a little bit better, a little bit more like a chair. Yeah, it overall looks a little bit nicer now with that symbolic line work included with the geometry. So that's a good way of going about having a look at your model, especially when, you know, visibility graphics overrides or not. applying and things aren't looking the way they should. Maybe got some random lines sticking out or something like that. Best way is to go into the family, have a look at it, make sure the geometry isn't hidden, and make sure, if you hide the geometry, you lose the ability to, filter and create graphical overrides. Obviously, later in the project cycle, maybe that is, what you're going for. This is probably something that's a little bit more relevant to, the design phases. When you get to, permit and tender, you might want to turn off the geometry and use line work to show where you're trying to show, because, at that point, color doesn't really matter. So yeah, that was just like a quick little tip of how you might go about troubleshooting the visual styles of your families.